Let's jump into some pre-submitted questions that we were asked prior to this webinar. One of the questions is, will we have to pay our medical marijuana card if we want to stay with the medical marijuana program, and what's the benefits? The answer is yes, and hopefully that previous slide and what we put out there helps clarify what the benefits will be. The first benefit is going to be something really clear, which is being able to purchase product. Because again, this is going to get mired up in a lot of legal access, and we don't want to have you not be able to get your product to address your condition during that time. But also, the tax rate is going to be pretty high. It's going to be 20% plus, could be as high as 30%. Also, having to purchase a lot more product because of the THC cap is going to be a problem. And really, it's going to be something where to be able to protect your ability to buy it, to be able to protect the ability to have the products that you need and do it at a reasonable cost is something that you may want to pay attention to with respect to your medical marijuana card. Next question is, if you have a state ID card in Florida, we still need to see a doctor twice a year. Right now, the way the cannabis medical marijuana program works in Florida, the answer is yes. That's the way the program is set up. There's no provision in this amendment to change that, although there's a lot of discussions about that, and that's a separate topic from the amendment. Okay, the amendment itself still requires you to see a doctor twice a year, where the adult use amendment will put a little pressure on that. We'll see what happens, but I suspect, and I think the best way to project that is to just expect to see that twice a year as well. Next question is, I heard medical marijuana patients are now prohibited from buying firearms. Will Amendment 3 prohibit leisure recreational users from purchasing firearms? That is a very interesting topic. The answer to your question is, Florida medical marijuana patients are not prohibited from buying firearms. There's been legal challenges. The restrictions to purchasing firearms comes from filling out the federal form, which is a federal form that asks you if you're using, candidly, marijuana either recreationally or medically. And if you answer yes to that, they were stopping people from purchasing firearms. Now, there's been 3 different legal challenges to that particular amendment. Right now, the federal courts have passed, let's just say, judgment that they cannot stop you from buying a firearm from being, if you are using cannabis. Now, just because a federal judge has done that doesn't mean that here in Florida that they're going to recognize that. And that's the problem we have in Florida. They're not recognizing that legislation that's been passed. So that is a real tricky subject right now. It's kind of pro and it's kind of con. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out right now that's there. Lee, what's the next question? I've lost the question. By the way, Amy, you have some ideas on that?
Yeah, so I do. Part of purchasing a firearm is that purchasing a firearm in the United States is a federal act. As it stands right now, cannabis is still a Schedule I narcotic, meaning that the US government feels that it has no medical benefit and a high risk for addiction and abuse. So probably until we see it recategorized, we will still have a federal ban on the use of cannabis with purchasing a firearm. Because, and I say that because when you fill out that federal form, you still must answer the question about cannabis honestly. Even if there are court cases going through right now, those court cases have not changed the actual federal law. And so as of right now, you could not purchase a new firearm if you're a cannabis user, if you answer that question honestly. However, that does not stop you from owning or possessing a firearm because you're not purchasing it. You already purchased it. You already own it. So that's my thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's important. This is a subject that's been litigated in courts. Again, there's been 3 different federal courts on this, and all I can say is stay tuned. Right now, you can possess firearms. Purchasing firearms are questionable. I've heard people who have, and I heard people who've been stopped. So again, that's just up in the air, and I'm giving you kind of the straight answer on that, so don't shoot the messenger. Hopefully that we'll be able to purchase firearms with that, just like people who drink alcohol or that type of thing. One of the other questions is, if legalized, can we smoke in public? And I think the answer is no. Amy, you had a comment on that, because that's really not public. That's not legal, both medically, and does it look like they would follow the suit recreationally.
Correct. So as the Florida law is currently written for medical marijuana patients, you are supposed to consume your cannabis products in a private setting.
Mhm.
It does not allow for the consumption of any cannabis products in a public setting. That would include smoking cannabis out in public, smoking cannabis on a beach, smoking cannabis at restaurants. Any of those places that we would think about people legally smoking cigarettes, you can still not smoke cannabis out in public.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, and I think that'll probably, again, the regulations for adult use aren't as fine, but it'll probably be the same as the medical program. Next question is, will residents be able to legally grow the plant? And the answer is no. There's no provisions in this amendment. In fact, that's one of the biggest pushbacks on the amendment is there is no provisions for home grow. And I think that's one of the faults of not having it there. Now, I will defend the people who put together the amendment. They claim that if they put it in there, the Florida Supreme Court would have stopped the amendment. I'm not sure of that. I'm just telling you what they're saying, but there is no provision today for illegal home grow. Next question is, where is the best place to find more information on the terpenes and other marijuana things? Candidly, the best place that I know of is go to YouTube, Marijuana Aware. We have a number of, we have many videos on how to get started, on the basics, on on terpenes. We have in-depth webinars on them, which you can review, and the questions and answers to go with that. And then all things that related to marijuana on routes of administration, on how it works with various conditions like arthritis, pain management, sleep, that type of thing. I think that's the best place to go there. And Amy, you've been referring patients to that website, haven't you? Or that YouTube channel, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it has a lot of really great videos. They're not super long, so they're easy to just watch for a couple minutes if that's all you need, get the information that you need, and then move on.
Right. We're actually putting out, for your information, we're putting out a snippet, a short video that'll actually talk about if Amendment 3 passes, what are the benefits of a medical marijuana card? It basically summarizes a lot of what we talked about in this webinar, but makes it a little more concise and easier for you to understand if you want to be able to pick that up as well. Let's take a look at some of the other questions. Some of the live questions, Jeremy asked a question. I've read through the proposed Amendment 3 document. However, I saw nothing about a consumer allowance for a set of plants that can be grown. Is there any information about that thus far? Jeremy, you're dead on. There is no provision in that amendment for home grow, and there's not a lot of discussions on it right now, other than the fact that people are very upset that it's not there. Again, I think that's one of the deficiencies of that particular amendment. Linda asks a very good question. It says the amendment allows the existing dispensaries to sell to anyone. Will it allow new dispensaries to sell non-medical, or does all of this need to be written into the legislature? Since we don't know what's written, I'm going to take a leap of faith here and say it's going to have to be written it's going to have to be written into the document when it's being put together. I don't see cannabis being purchased, and by cannabis I mean both CBD products as well as marijuana products being able to purchase from any place other than a dispensary. That's one of the reasons why Trulieve wanted to be able to push this forward, is because they wanted to be able to control the sale of both hemp and also marijuana that's there. Any thoughts that you have on that, Amy?
Yeah, so the way that the amendment is written is that adults 21 years of age and older would be able to go to any state licensed dispensaries. Currently in the state of Florida, we have 23, 24 state licensed dispensary companies. And it would allow those companies to sell cannabis products to any person over 21. As far as allowing new dispensaries, this amendment does not open up or propose any new state licenses for dispensaries. So it would not bring in any more competition for the companies that are already operating in our state. And then, as far as we know, we've not really seen any like written stuff from the legislature about this at all. Part of that is because it has not passed yet. So we'll be really interested to see what the legislature comes up with if this does pass.
Yeah, and I should point out that the medical marijuana program, which is in place today, has provisions, has formulas to being able to require more licenses to be issued. The state is woefully behind in issuing those licenses. So even though the provision is there in the medical marijuana provisions, they're dragging their feet in a lot of cases for a lot of the different provisions with respect to increasing the number of outlets to being able to purchase medical cannabis. And that's going to be a potential problem going forward. The other question is, why would I pay for a medical marijuana card if recreational marijuana is legalized? Amy, do you want to tackle that one? I think we've gone over that a couple times, but do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts?
absolutely. Um, there are definitely some benefits to remaining a medical patient. Obviously, as we've said, as soon as, if the law passes, there will not be any actual implementation of an adult use program until at least May of 2025. So in those 6 months, the only way for a person to be able to purchase any cannabis products would be as a medical patient. The other part of that is we don't know yet if the state is going to put THC, like really restrictive THC caps in. We don't know what the excise tax will be on cannabis. We don't know if the state is going to put any other really restrictive limits in place. So at least for the time being, I would say absolutely keep your medical card because that's the only way right now. And at least for the next, 8 months, 9 months, that we will be able to purchase any cannabis.
Right, and knowing that the state of Florida has copied a lot of the legislation and a lot of the rules from other states, if they go along with what Texas and what Georgia has done, the adult use program will be severely restricted, probably to the point where it's going to be very difficult for a medical patient to get the products that they need. And I think that's one of the main reasons why you want to maintain your medical marijuana card. Let's move on to the next question that's there. So Keith asked, how long is the limit on the THC? A week or a month?
Mm.
You want to tackle that one, Amy?
Um, yeah, so I think this is in, yeah, I'm gonna just read what just popped up on the screen. So the proposed limits for adult use would be 3 ounces of cannabis and no more than 5 grams of that 3 ounces may be in the form of concentrates. Um, Again, this is what we're expecting. And this is, again, just a starting area. So we don't know if this is going to change when it actually goes through the legislature, if they will make any, if they will open it up more or if they will restrict it more. We don't know.
Sure. And again, it's not based on time. I think that's the important part. It's based on how much you actually possess in your possession at any one given point in time. And that's what's important. So just being able to purchase cannabis and have it available to you in your house could be a problem. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And
Linda asked,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I was also going to add, I do foresee the state putting in rolling limits similar to what there is in the medical program. Um, it's, it's been effective in keeping patients from purchasing large amounts of cannabis in a very short amount of time. So I absolutely foresee that they will put in some sort of rolling limit for, marijuana products along with smokable flower.
Sure. Great. So Linda asked a really good question. It says, if this passes, wouldn't it be possible to tweak it later, maybe more easily than starting from scratch? Linda, that's a great question. I've had a lot of discussions with people like Chris Cano from Normal, and the hope that a lot of these organizations have is that it gets put in place. It is not a bill that's going to be able to be really put together a formal adult use program. It has a lot of deficiencies, but I think the main thing that's going to come into play is that they're hoping that they can do that. Now, there's two schools of thought. School of thought number one is, if they do decide to tweak it, how long is it going to take to get tweaked? Based on a record that we've seen from the medical marijuana program, it takes multiple months, if not years, to be able to tweak that particular program. And that's one of the problems that we're seeing is that, yes, it can be tweaked, but it may be just easier to come up with a better bill and put it on the ballot. And that's the pros and cons. Nobody knows. And that's one of the discussions that a lot of the pro people are having is they would like to see it get tweaked quickly. But it's pretty clear that the legislature, who has in their hands no restrictions and free reign to be able to set up that program, we're not going to know what they're going to be able to do. They won't have their first pass done until minimally May of next year, and it does. I don't know how long it's going to take to get the rest of the provisions put in place, like home grow, for example. I'll take that as an example. And possession limits, that'll be some that come into play, and then of course the horizontal market. So there's a lot of issues that come into play. I would like to believe, as a person, that we put it in place, and within the first year we tweak it correctly. Based on the political atmosphere that we see here in Florida, I think that's very, very optimistic, maybe too optimistic. Let me put it to you that way and see that's there.
So we could move on to Kim's question. Within the treatment center, the product is trusted. If entities are permitted to sell within also, what securities are in place to ensure that security? So what I think this is referring to is if small mom and pop companies and small growers were able to sell to a dispensary and what protections would be in place. Generally, in any other states that do have adult use programs or even medical programs that allow small mom and pop growers to sell to larger entities, generally all of those products that are sold to the larger dispensary has to be lab tested by a state licensed and regulated third-party laboratory. However, in the state of Florida, we have what's called vertical integration. That means that take, for example, TruLeaf, they are responsible for growing all of the products, processing everything, transporting it to the dispensaries, and then they have to actually own the dispensary storefront as well. So it means that TruLeaf is only selling products that they have grown. So as of right now, we actually don't have that problem with small mom and pop sellers being able to sell to a larger dispensary. So not an issue in our state, but certainly that is something that other states are dealing with.
Sure. Yeah, we hope to ask that question. The whole reason you have a program is to have it secured to make sure you're buying quality products. I believe they'll do that. And they'll probably follow the same rules and regulations that they have in the medical program. The problem is it's going to be a different product, meaning lower THC caps and things like that. Deborah asked a good question. What about SATA and VAM? Well, naturally, they've all backed the amendment, and all the people that currently have a license are backing the amendment. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I've talked to them about it in both of those companies and other companies as well. They're naturally they're gonna back it because it's there. But they're also I have to tell you, they're very concerned about the limitations of the bill as well, because they understand what people want in the market. This is a clear case of our legislation and this amendment not really answering the needs of the people. And I think that's something we need to stand up as voters. We need to stand up and demand that they pay attention to what we really want, not what they want. They work for us, we don't work for them. Excuse me if I get on my high horse on that. G asked a question. It says, could you please go and show the pros slide again? Lee, can you get back and pick that one up? Would that be too difficult to do? There we go. And the pros are really key, okay? Because again, there's some really key pieces that come into place here where the not only can people at the age of 21 be able to purchase the product, but hemp and cannabis will also be under the same set of statutes, which could be pro or con. It works, but it does provide for the quality that you talked about, the security, getting a quality product that's out there. One of the main big provisions of this is going to be reducing the number of low-level marijuana possession arrests. I know there's a lot of people that feel that that's a waste of time. Candidly, in talking to a few sheriff's department and a few of the legislators, they could do that without this amendment. They just haven't, and that's something that we need to pay attention to. I think the other piece that comes into play is you'll have to purchase your products through today licensed dispensaries that we see in the state of Florida. Any other thoughts you have on that, Amy?
Yeah, so there are absolutely pros to this. One of the big things, of course, is going to be the ending of ridiculously draconic low-level marijuana possession charges. Yeah. But one of the other things is some people, just like it says at the bottom, Amendment 3 is considered a starting point, and it's just going to be reworked to the point where it has benefits for the actual residents of our state. We just don't know what it's going to look like is the problem.
Yeah, it's there. It's a good point. Let's move on to the next question. I think that, and by the way, G, we'll have a copy of the slides available to you after this webinar. You'll get an email from us that you'll be able to download the slides and be able to have them and take a look at them in a flipbook format. So hopefully you can look at it again if you really want to be able to do that. The other question is, how will local smoke shops be impacted? Again, it hasn't been formalized, but the rumor and talking to the hemp industry, they see them literally getting shut down. Your thoughts on that, Amy?
Yeah, so I would actually agree with you. If the state were to lump marijuana and hemp together, it would really hamstring a lot of shops and the hemp shops in our area, in our state. And the reason for that is because the only people that would be allowed to legally sell those products, including hemp products, would be state licensed dispensaries. So you're talking about having to go to True Leave now to get your CBD products, versus now, like currently under the regulations, you can go to your local smoke shop, you can go to your local hemp store, you can go to the CVS or Walgreens and pick up CBD products. And we're going to see that be drastically kind of hamstringed if that does pass.
Sure. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me most about this bill. The local smoke shops, it takes the small business owner and just wipes them out. And I think that's something that we should pay attention to. Let's put it that way. I got a question from Anonymous, and it's a really good question. This is really the crux of this whole thing. If this amendment is not passed, do you see a better amendment possibly being proposed in the future? Some people are worried it's now and never. Well, first of all, there is better amendments. There is a better amendment that's out there. It did not get it got the number of signatures, but it didn't get the financial backing. I mean, you've got to understand, Trulieve has poured millions of dollars into this backing. And so it just didn't have let's just say, the juice to be able to get it over the goal line. But the answer is yes, there will be more proposals and better proposals put forward. However, a lot of people are worried that if we don't do it now, we won't do it. We won't get it. And candidly, it'll be at least 2 years before there's going to be another amendment on the ballot. So that's a legitimate question. If we don't do it now, will we ever get it? The answer is we'll get it in the future. Question is it going to be 2 years from now, 4 years from now, or 6 years from now? And that's a real question that's really out there. I don't know. I haven't answered that question. I think the future is something that I wish I could read tea leaves, and that's something that's not there. But there are better amendments. If it doesn't pass, you still can get a medical marijuana card. You'll still have your local smoke shops. But I think the question is, will we be able to get recreational marijuana in Florida? There's enough momentum. The people of Florida want recreational marijuana, but they want a bill that includes home growth, that includes the capability to be able to buy in multiple locations, and the capability to buy a quality product. And I think that's something that is always on people's mind. So the answer is, that's a good worry. I wish I had an answer for that, and I really don't. And that's why voting is really, really important.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you. We kind of have to look at it as this is what we have now. And if if this Amendment 3 were to fail and another amendment would be proposed, you're still talking about companies or nations having to raise millions of dollars to get those, to get the signatures to even get the measure on the ballot. All of the time that it actually takes with lawyers and legislatures to get this written in a way that it doesn't get kicked back by the court. So it's what we have available to us now, and it's really just going to be up to the voters to decide if that meets their needs.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Laura asked a good question. Is this a given? Hemp will be lumped in with medical marijuana, or with marijuana? The answer is yes. That is very clear in the amendment that hemp and marijuana will be lumped into one set of regulations that's really out there. And I think that's very clear. There's no possibility of that. They're black and white on that. Your thoughts, Amy?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As the amendment is currently written, they are trying to consolidate low THC products and high THC products under the same set of regulations. And those regulations would give pretty much exclusive rights for the sale of those products to state licensed dispensaries.
Right. That's really there. Well, we've answered a lot of the questions. If anybody has any other questions, please let us know. As I mentioned earlier today, you really vote. Pro or con, we're not trying to lean one way or the other. We're trying to give you the facts of what's out there. It is very touchy. It has some very controversial issues related to it. And I think you brought up some great questions that we really don't have answers to. I wish we did, but it's something that we really need to pay attention to. I think it's important that we, the people, vote. Legislators work for us. Unfortunately, the Tallahassee legislators believe that we work for them. But I think we should take the opportunity to vote and express yourself in this particular area. And I hope we've given you some information that helps you decide which way you want to go. Your thoughts, Amy?
Yep, that's pretty much it. As I said before, I don't have an opinion one way or another. I hope to just provide enough facts and information and general education so that voters can make an informed decision that best serves them.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned into this webinar. We're sorry for the technical difficulties in the beginning. We will definitely work that out because in our next video that we're doing, which is next week, is going to be on the federal Schedule 3. We'll hopefully get it all ironed out by then. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us. Please tune in to our YouTube channel, Marijuana Aware. It'll help you get a lot of the information that you need moving forward. And hopefully this particular webinar helps you make decisions on what you want to do. Your final thoughts, Amy?
Yep, just same thing every single time. I always recommend starting with a treatment journal just to help you figure out products that are effective for you. Start low, go slow. And then, of course, especially with this issue, just make sure that you feel well educated and you vote in a way that best expresses your opinions.
Sure. And this, again, this is a tough decision. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's why we wanted to get the facts out there, the pros and cons, and hopefully people can be able to make their information that's out there. You'll be getting an email from us as a follow-up that'll have a link to this video. It'll have a link to the Q&A and also to the presentation itself. And if you have any questions, please feel free to go to events@marijuanaaware.com and be able to ask us any questions. Thank you very much for joining us. And Amy, thank you for being here today. And I want to thank our moderators, Lee and Leah, who did a great job in the background to help us be able to get this thing started. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. And join us next week. We're going to talk about the federal Schedule 3. I think that's going to be important as well. There's a lot of activity going on to legalize marijuana. The people want it. It's time for our legislators to get on that train. So, Amy, thank you very much. And everybody, thank you very much for joining us tonight.